I finished high school early, and I was only, if I was 17, I was barely 17. And Ann Arbor, Michigan is a university town, and I was able to take advantage of that and attend university lectures and use their libraries and learn about their computers and their telescopes, and learned a great deal, which allowed me to get some advanced placement when I eventually arrived at the academy. I think if you had asked me at the time, before I went to the academy, if I knew what I was getting into, I would have probably had a pretty convincing answer, because I had read a lot and I had learned about it, and I probably would have sounded like I knew what I was getting into. But I know better now. I know that for a really intense activity like the academy or basic cadet training, you can't prepare for that by reading, thinking, and talking. You just have to experience it. It turns out that General LeMay, Curtis LeMay, who was a very outsized, influential figure in the Air Force in those years, was the chief of staff actually at that time, and he liked judo. And so he sent top-notch instructors, including a champion of all Japan, to our Air Force Academy to train us. Well, what an opportunity. General LeMay actually arranged to send me to Japan as a cadet. So I spent a summer in Japan, and then the next summer as well, training with the best of the Japanese practitioners of this art. And well, if you work at something long enough, you get good at it. So I got to represent the United States in international competitions. I think there's no doubt that the most important lesson for my entire life there was the honor code. But after graduation, you come to realize there's a lot more to honesty than just not lying, cheating, and stealing. You need to give answers and actions that other people can rely on. Oh, along with everybody else, I was glad to graduate, of course. In our day, we were all pilot qualified, and so I was off to pilot training. And by that time, I knew a lot about airplanes from pilot training, and I certainly wanted to fly fighters. Well, I was at pilot training. I met my wife, Mary Lynn, who is still my wife after 56 years. We moved off together to Alamogordo, so it's a very desolate location, but a good place to fly fighters, because if you crash, you don't hurt anybody. But we were only there a matter of weeks before we got orders to go to Vietnam. We were the very first F-4 squadron from the Air Force to land in Vietnam. And that's where on our very first missions up there, we were greatly surprised by something that I had never even heard of. And I don't think anybody else in our squadron had ever heard of it. And that was a SAM missile, surface-to-air missile. They were Russian missiles, and they were killing us. We didn't know how to deal with them. It was a very difficult time. I set to thinking about that one, and I said, you know, if I could figure out how those SAM missiles worked, I could, I bet, figure out a way for us to evade them. And I worked on that problem with my mathematics, my undergraduate level mathematics, not terribly strong mathematics. And I really couldn't figure it out. I could solve a few simple cases, but I couldn't figure it out. Next assignment was in England. It passed through the States, but off to England in another fighter squadron. That was a different mission. That was nuclear alert. I was there about a year. I'm trying to remember how this unfolded. And some orders came down quite by surprise to everyone, my commander and to me. I was to report to the commander of Air Forces in Berlin. Job title was called Chief of Protocol, and the reason for that name is it was written into the four-power agreements signed right after between the four powers on how we'd manage the city. And so we had an Air Force, a Soviet, a French, and an English person all in a particular location that controlled air traffic. And then I sort of took care of the human side of things. But that time came to an end, and I was just bound and determined I wanted to go back to graduate school. 7 years had gone by. If I didn't go back now, I was never going to be able to do it. Told the Air Force that's what I wanted to do, and they were bound and determined that I was going to do something else. The Air Force and I couldn't come to agreement on that. But the University of Michigan was my home, and they took me in. And it's a very good school, and I ended up writing a PhD thesis on the subject that had bothered me in Vietnam, the statistical prediction. So after a couple of years in graduate school, where I was in a big hurry because I had a family to support, so I finished a master's degree and a PhD in 2.5 years because I worked very hard. And I wrote this PhD thesis on prediction theory, and finally I knew how to work these SAMs. Was able to get a good offer of a job as a professor at the University of Chicago. And so I went off doing research in my particular area, statistical prediction theory, and then the other side of the SAM problem, the decision theory for guidance. It turns out, happily, that there are a lot of people that have that problem. And a professor there named Victor Zarnowitz, who was an expert on economic recessions. He said, we're not very good at predicting economic recessions, and you're a new professor here, and we understand you're really good at predicting things and know a lot about that subject. So I worked on recessions, and then it turns out if you're in the electric power business, you have this problem. And what they need to know is they don't care if it's July 20th or August 10th, but they want to know what the peak demand is going to be so they can build generating capacity so that when that demand occurs, they don't have a blackout. So I worked on that problem for a while, and then it turns out there's a lot of other people with similar problems. Just like everybody who wants to sell something, they would like to know what the demand for their product is going to be. So I was a busy beaver as a professor. For about 20 years I was busy beaver as a professor. I can't do a good job of teaching and research at a major university and do a good job of the outside work that I was doing for power companies and other people that wanted to pay me money to do it. And so I got some other people who were similarly skilled in my area. We started a firm, a small firm, 20, 25 people, and we took on projects from all over the world, from governments and industry, and not just statistical prediction, but in virtually every area of mathematics. We were studying launching of satellites and aircraft accidents and automobile accidents, and you name it, we were doing it. And you name a client and we were working for them. Yeah, we were the only ones that could do it. So it was, we were the go-to place. We had zero marketing effort. We had a telephone and it would ring. That was it, and we were very busy. In 2007, so the time has progressed quite a bit here to 2007, found myself on an AOG committee, a steering committee for a fundraising campaign that they were involved in. All universities, public and private, except the military academies, have large organizations that do fundraising. It's how they exist. But there was no hope of getting federal funding for them. So the need to do some kind of fundraising was there, but we were truly naive about how to go about that. We said, let's think about this. What are we doing wrong? What can we do better? How can we, surely there's a way to do this fundraising that everybody's going to love and it's going to work. There were two important things that we weren't doing well, and that without doing those things well, there was no hope to have decent fundraising. It's fundraising and stewardship, and we can't forget the stewardship, because without it, you can't do fundraising. You have to go out to the graduates and you have to ask them, what do they want? What do they think the Academy needs? And you get these really surprising answers that turn out to be very good ideas. I never would have known it, but we are now in the construction business at the foundation. We've completed 10 major construction projects and have, I think, 11 more underway. And we have the money to do it. We have now raised close to $300 million. We're on track to get over $350 million in the not too distant future. So we can pay for these things. Where do we get the money? Our generous donors, the ones with the good ideas. My support, and Mary Lynn and my support, because most of these gifts are family matter gifts. We wanted a place where cadets, after listening to whatever they listened to or doing whatever they were doing, could go out and sit down on a bench and talk to each other in a pleasant atmosphere. And I thought if that was ever going to happen, it was going to happen in the Character Center. Marilyn and I were into benches, and she liked the trees, and so that's what we did. Well, being named a distinguished graduate is obviously an award for what the foundation has become, not me personally. The big achievement of the last 15 years has been the standing up and creation of this foundation, and it deserves recognition, so that's what that award means to me. One has to thank the board of directors. We have a marvelously hardworking and talented board of directors who are also our major donors, and all of the other donors that have helped us become valuable to the Academy. They deserve thanks, and I give them my thanks. Mary Lynn has been with me happily for 56 years, and we've done all these interesting things with the Air Force together since pilot training. Now we have 3 children. 2 were born in Berlin and 1 after, while I was in graduate school, and now 6 grandchildren, some of them very talented. I'm very pleased, and we don't have a rotten apple in the bunch. Well, I've had time to think. You can't be a professor for 20 years and not be thinking. The big moments in life are personal. Your marriage, your birth of your children, things you can do for other people. The big moments are not what I did, but what happened in my life that involved other people. And I think in that respect, my big moments are everybody else's big moments.